Golem, Story and Pictures by David Wisniewski. Golem. Golem, Story and Pictures by David Wisniewski. Within the beautiful city of Prague, fierce hatreds have raged for 1,000 years. People of differing beliefs in God and nation have clashed violently here. Czech against German, Protestant against Catholic, Christian against Jew. In the year 1580, the Jews of Prague were bearing the ignorant fury of others. Enemies had accused them of mixing the blood of Christian children with the flour and water of matzah, the unleavened Passover bread. This blood lie incited angry mobs to great cruelty against the Jews. Penned in their walled ghetto, forbidden to use of weapons or protections of law, the Jews could do nothing to stop the vicious falsehood. Judah Loew ben Bezalel, chief rabbi of Prague, knew the violence lay ahead. Deeply troubled, he entered his study to fast and pray for the deliverance of his people. He fell into restless slumber and dreamed of fire and ruin. When all seemed lost, a hand of light appeared and wrote one glowing word upon the smoke and ashes: Golem. Rabbi Loew woke with a start. Golem was a giant of living clay, animated by Kabbalah, mystical teachings of untold power. Only the most righteous man, a tzaddik, could create and control such a creature. Was this heavenly answer he sought? Rising from his desk, the rabbi peered into the night. Shouted curses and drunken threats hurtled over the ghetto walls like stones. He decided it must be so. In the morning, Rabbi Loew sent for his son, Itzhak Cohen, and his best student, Yaakov Sassoon. He explained the dream and asked for their help. As the divine name, the Hashem, created us through words, so we must create Golem, he said. Now pray and purify yourselves. For this night we must use the holy name of God. When darkness fell, the three men left the ghetto through a secret opening in the wall. They hurried along the forbidden avenues of Prague to the cold clay banks of the river Vltava. Itzhak and Yaakov began to dig. By midnight, an enormous mound of clay lay before the rabbi. Praying softly, he plunged his hands into the vast lump, shaping it. Hours later, he arose and stood back. A crude clay giant lay lifeless on the riverbank. Raising his arms, Rabbi Loew chanted Zerufim, mighty spells from the Kabbalah. The words soared aloft and unleashed the power of life itself. As lightning strikes iron and flashes to earth, so the infinite energy of creation blazed through the rabbi into the coarse clay. Staggering, the rabbi lifted his arms higher and uttered the holy name. Howling wind and torrential rain lashed down. Writhing columns of steam streaked from the figure. Itzhak and Yaakov gripped each other in fear. When the tumult ceased, the three men advanced over the hissing ground. There, wreathed in vapor, lay a giant man, complete and perfect. The rabbi knelt and engraved the word Emet, truth, upon the creature's forehead. Instantly, the giant's chest expanded like bellows. A deep breath shuddered from his lips. Golem, commanded the rabbi, awake! Golem's eyes opened, murky and unblinking. Father, his great voice rumbled, was this wise to do? We shall know soon enough, answered Rabbi Loew. Now, stand, wrap this cloak about yourself and follow us. In the darkness before dawn, four returned to the ghetto. Rabbi Loew led Golem to the attic above his study. You have been created for one reason, said the rabbi, to protect the Jews. Do you understand? Yes, said Golem. You will guard the ghetto at night and catch those planting false evidence of the blood lie. They are godless men. carrying bottles of blood or the body of a missing child. You must bring them unharmed to the authorities. Do you understand? Yes, said Golem. By day you will be a servant in the synagogue, a shamash. Your name will be Joseph. Do you understand? Yes, said Golem. He stared at the rabbi. How long shall I live? This startled Rabbi Loew. Until the Jews are no longer in danger, he replied. Then you will return to the earth from whence you came. Do you understand? Golem said nothing. Do you understand, Joseph? Repeated Rabbi Loew. Yes, said Golem. Golem's arrival shocked Rabbi Loew's people, but the rabbi calmed them. Joseph is a devoted servant of Israel, he declared. His great strength will be a blessing to us all. And so it was. Hardly a night passed that Golem did not frustrate efforts to spread the blood lie. One morning Rabbi Loew saw Golem standing motionless in the lane. Joseph, called the rabbi, is all well? The sun is rising, said Golem. The sky changes from black to blue. It is very beautiful. Rabbi Loew sighed. How simple Golem was. The smallest thing, the scent of a rose, the flight of a pigeon, filled him with wonder. Joseph, he replied, finish your work. Then you can watch the sunrise. With the jail full of Golem's arrests, the thoughtful people of Prague began to see the blood lie for the slander it was. This enraged the enemies of the Jews. They gathered a mob and marched to the ghetto, hoping to start a riot. Rabbi Loew summoned Golem and hurried to the gates of the ghetto. The giant seemed taller than before. The rabbi could barely see the mark of truth on his forehead. With a hail of bricks and curses, the mob arrived and stormed the gates. The massive doors swayed but held. Golem stood before them. The Jews, outnumbered and weaponless, waited silently. When a jeering cry went up, a battering ram had arrived. At each blow, wood splintered, hinges wailed in protest. Still, Golem stood, but taller, much taller. Rabbi Loew could see him grow. Then the gates came crashing down. The mob poured into the ghetto. The first wave of attackers screamed in terror when they saw Golem looming above them. With the back of his hand he swept them aside. Still the rabble surged in. Propelled by those in back, Golem took hold of the battering ram and snapped it in two, raked great furors into the crowd. Rabbi Loew covered his eyes. This was too much destruction, too much. Leaving the dead and wounded, the mob fled in panic. Golem threw the broken battering ram after them. He lifted the shattered gates and hung them back on their ruined hinges, then plodded back into the ghetto. The next day, Rabbi Loew was summoned to Prague Castle. "What will you do now?" demanded the emperor. "Will you conquer this city with your giant and enslave us all?" Would a people who celebrate the end of their own slavery wish to inflict slavery on others? Replied the rabbi. No, Golem was created to protect the Jews. He has no other purpose. "How long will the monster live?" asked the emperor. "Until the Jews are no longer in danger," answered Rabbi Loew. "Then I guarantee the safety of your people," the emperor declared. "Destroy Golem." "It will be done," said the rabbi. "But if we are threatened again, Golem will return, stronger than before." The rabbi found Golem in the cemetery, gazing at the tombstones. "Joseph," he said softly, "come here." "No," said Golem. "Why not?" asked the rabbi. "The Jews are safe," Golem said. "Now you will return me to the earth." "Yes," said Rabbi Loew, "your purpose is at an end." Golem regarded the setting sun. He raised his face to the fading light. "Father," he said, "will I remember this?" "No," said Rabbi Loew, "you will be clay." Golem leaned down to him. "Then I shall not obey you," he said. "You have no choice, Joseph." The rabbi lashed out with his staff, erasing the first letter, Elf, from the word on Golem's forehead. At this, Emet, the truth, became Met, death. Golem staggered and fell to his knees. "Oh, Father," he pleaded, "do not do this to me." Even after he lifted his mighty hands, they were dissolving. "Please," Golem cried, "please let me live. I did all that you asked of me. Life is so precious to me." With that, he collapsed into clay. All that night, Yitzhak Cohen and Yaakov Sassoon wheeled barrows of clay to the synagogue. They carried the clay to the attic. Rabbi Loew covered it with an old sidurs, tattered prayer books of the congregation. Though Golem had not truly been a man, they recited Kaddish, the prayer of the dead. Then they left, locking the door behind them forever. Since then, Golem has slept the dreamless sleep of clay, but many say he could awaken. Perhaps, when the desperate need for justice is united with holy purpose, Golem will come to life once more. A note. Golem is the Hebrew word for shapeless mass. In the Bible, Psalms 139:16, a form of the word describes mankind before creation. Thine eyes did see my substance, Galmi, yet being unperfect. In the Talmud, the revered collection of Jewish civil and sacred laws, the word denotes anything imperfect or incomplete. Unconscious Adam, initially a body without a soul, neshama, is referred to as a golem. From the usage comes from the golem of medieval legend. In Jewish tradition, to create life is to approximate the power of the Almighty. The making of a golem could be initiated only by the most pious and righteous man, a tzaddik. The tzaddik must be thoroughly learned in Kabbalah, a mystical body of knowledge aimed at understanding the hidden nature of God and putting this understanding to practical use, to heal the sick and combat evil. Kabbalistic beliefs are most likely originated with Middle Eastern sages around the year 100. They became popular in medieval times, and there are still many adherents among Hasidic Jews to this day. The basic teachings of Kabbalah are contained in the Zohar, a book written in the 1200s by Spanish Kabbalist Moses de Leon. But it is in the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, a 6th century volume of less than 2,000 words that contains, among other formulas, Zerufim, the one for creating a golem. The Sefer Yetzirah was conceived as mystical speculation about creation. By the 11th century, however, it had come to be regarded as a work of practical mysticism, a guide to the act of creation. According to the Sefer Yetzirah, the giving of life was achieved by reciting combinations of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Because of these 22 letters derived from the Tetragrammaton, the ineffable four-letter name of God, they possess holy power. Since God uses these letters in uttering the words that created the universe, humans can wield the same forces by prayerfully mastering combinations of letters. Judah Loew ben Bezalel, 1513-1609, chief rabbi of Prague in the late 16th century, was a renowned Kabbalist. As a rabbi, a blend of scholar, judge, and religious leader, he wrote extensively about religious issues, won tolerance and respect from hostile Christian clergy, and defended the Jews against unjust government decrees. Ironically, much of his fame rests upon his supposed connection with the golem, while in fact the tales of a rabbi who created a golem to defend his people were originally told of Rabbi Elijah of Chelm, Poland. Only in the mid-1700s did Rabbi Loew become the subject of these stories. This shift makes sense if one considers both Loew's reputation as a Kabbalist and the occult atmosphere of Prague during Loew's time. The city was filled with alchemists and necromancers, many of them on the payroll of Emperor Rudolph II. Fascinated by the supernatural ambiance, the emperor had moved his residence from Vienna to Prague. He actually met with Rabbi Loew on February 23, 1592, possibly to discuss political matters or the virtues of astrology. Legend has made the encounter a showdown over the fate of the Golem. The story of the Golem serves as a cautionary tale about the limits of human power. It has inspired the work of composers and authors. There is evidence of its influence in Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein. The tale may even prove prophetic. As the field of computer science, robotics, and gene manipulations advance, technological golems may arise in our culture. But the golem has perhaps its greatest resonance in folklore. Considering the Jewish people's long history of conflict and suffering, it is no surprise that the legend of the golem, in which massive physical strength defeats overwhelming persecution, remains one of the most powerful traditional stories. During centuries of conquest and strife and exile, many Jews left Palestine. By the time of the Crusades, Jewish communities were scattered from Spain to India. This dispersion made the Jews a minority wherever they settled, and they were subjected to prejudice that took many forms. Forbidden to own land or to join craft guilds, Jews were forced into the heavy taxed and unpopular roles of minor merchants and money-lenderers. They were required to wear identifying badges or other special clothing. Outrageous slanders like the blood lie were perpetrated against them, resulting in mob violence and an appalling loss of life. Jews were not permitted to own weapons and could not defend themselves. In many European cities, Jews were confined to walled areas called ghettos and locked in at night. Venice banished its Jews to an island which was a foundry was located, and the word ghetto is derived from the medieval Venetian word ghetto, foundry. Not even the dead were allowed outside the ghetto walls. The tiny Jewish cemetery in Prague holds 12,000 graves, one atop another, as many as 12 deep. With only brief interludes of reason and tolerance, repression was all too typical of a Jewish experience. Christian intolerance and political power combined to force Jewish populations from entire countries. During the 13th century and 14th centuries, most Jews driven from France and England. In 1492, all Jews were expelled from Spain. The Inquisition, a special court created by the Roman Catholic Church to punish heretics, pursued the Jews throughout the Middle Ages. In modern times, prejudice against them reached its peak in the Holocaust, the Nazi murder campaign that killed 6 million Jews, a third of the world's Jewish population in the years 1939 to 45. Out of this unspeakable disaster grew the impetus to reestablish the Jewish state. The nation of Israel was founded in 1948. Historian J. Golem observed in his Psychohistory of Zionism that, like the Golem, Israel was created to protect the physical safety of Jews throughout the use of physical power. In this allegorical fashion, Golem still lives.